Hi there, I'm Jon Zimney. I'm the News and Program Director for 95.3 MNC. I'm also co-host of the morning news program, which you can hear from 5 a.m. till 9 a.m. weekdays on 95.3 FM. Reading's important because, frankly, if I didn't learn how to read, I wouldn't be able to read the news and I wouldn't be employed. So let's get started, shall we? Today, I'm going to read the book Curious George Takes a Job, and it's by H.A. Ray. And I like this book because, well, growing up, Curious George is one of the first books I remember reading. And I grew up as the son of two school teachers, so believe me, they had me reading all the time. But let's get going here with Curious George. Love this little monkey. It's George. George lived in the zoo. He was a good little monkey because he was very curious. He wanted to find out where he was going. He wanted to find out what was going on outside of the zoo. One day, when the keeper was not paying attention, George got a hold of the key to the cage. And when the keeper discovered what had happened, it was too late. George was gone. Where was George? They looked for him everywhere, but they couldn't find him. George was hiding in the hay of his friend, the elephant. Finally, the keepers gave up looking for him. George found a nice cozy spot to sleep under the elephant's right ear, and the next morning, before the zoo opened, he got away safely. Once in the street, George felt a little scared. What should he do in the big city? Maybe he could find his friend, the man with the big yellow hat, who had brought him over from Africa a long time ago. Only George did not know where he lived. There was a bus stopping at the corner. George had never ridden on one. Quickly, he climbed up a lamppost, jumped on top of the bus, and off they went. Now they were right in the center of the town. There was so much to see, and George did not know where to look first. If only he could go on riding like this forever. But after a while, George got a little tired and a little dizzy. And when the bus slowed down to turn into a side street, George jumped off. And there was a restaurant right in front of him. Something smelled good. Suddenly, George felt very hungry. The kitchen door stood open, and George walked in. And on the table was a big pot. Of course, George was curious. He had to find out what was in it. And when the cook came back, he had a big surprise. Spaghetti was all over the place, and in the middle of it, a little monkey. George had been eating yards and yards and wound himself all up in it. The cook was a kind man and didn't scold much, but George had to clean up the kitchen and do all the dishes. And my, there were a lot of them. The cook was watching George. "You're lucky to have 4 hands," he said. "You can do things twice as quickly. I have a friend who could use a handy little fellow like you to wash windows, and if you'd like to, I'll take you over to see him." So they went down to the subway and took an uptown train to find the cook's friend, who was an elevator man in a skyscraper. "Sure, I can use you, George," the elevator man said. "I'll give you what you need for the job, and you can start right away. But remember, you're here for washing windows. Never mind what people inside the house are doing, and don't be curious, you'll get in big trouble." Well, George promised to be good, but little monkeys sometimes forget. George was ready to start. My, how many windows there were. But George got ahead quickly, and since he had worked with all 4 hands, he jumped from window to window, just as he had once jumped from tree to tree in the African jungle. Well, for a while, George stuck to his work and did not pay any attention to the people inside. Of course, he was curious, but he remembered his promise. In one room, a little boy was crying because he did not want to eat a spinach. George did not even look, but went right on with his work. In another room, a man was taking a nap and snoring. Well, George was sorry it was not his friend, the man with the yellow hat. He listened to the funny noise for a while, then went on working. But what was going on in here? George stopped working and pressed his nose against the window. 2 painters were working inside, and George was fascinated. Painting looked like a lot more fun than washing windows. The painters were getting ready to go out for lunch, and the minute they left, George climbed inside. And what wonderful paints and brushes they had! George could not resist. An hour later, the painters came back. They opened the door and stood there with their mouths open. The whole room had changed into a jungle with palm trees on the walls and a giraffe and 2 leopards and a zebra and a little monkey who was busy painting himself on one of the trees. And the painters, they knew what happened. Luckily, George was close to a door, and he ran out as fast as he could, and after him ran the 2 painters, and the elevator man, and then the woman who lived in the place. "Oh, my lovely, lovely room," the woman said. "Don't let him get away." George headed for the fire escape. George reached the end of the fire escape. The others had not caught up with him yet, and here was his chance. They couldn't jump, but George could easily jump down and escape, and the moment he would, he knew he'd be safe. Poor little George. He had forgotten that the pavement was hard as stone, not like the soft grass in the jungle. Too bad. The fall had broke his leg, and an ambulance came, and off George went to the hospital. "He got what he deserved," the woman said, "making my apartment into a jungle indeed." "I told him he'd get into trouble," the elevator man added. "He was too curious." Well, George had to lie in bed with his leg high up in a plaster cast, and he was very unhappy. It had all started out so nicely. If only he had not been so curious, he could have had a lot of fun. Now it was too late. But the next morning, George's friend, the man with the big yellow hat, was buying his newspaper and suddenly got very excited. "This is George," he shouted when he saw the picture on the front page. Quickly, he read the whole story and then ran to a telephone booth to ring the hospital. "I'm George's friend," he said to the nurse who answered the telephone. "Please take good care of him so that he'll get better quickly. I want to take him to a movie studio and make a picture about his life in the jungle. And don't let him get into any more mischief until I can take him away." Finally, the day came when George could walk again. "Your friend is going to take you away this morning," said the nurse. "Just wait right here for him and don't touch anything." Well, as soon as George was alone, he looked around at all the strange hospital things, and I wonder what's in that big blue bottle, he thought. Oh boy. George was curious, the bottle smelled funny, and suddenly his head began to turn, and he felt as if he was flying. And then the rings and the stars danced right before his eyes, and everything went dark. And this is how the man with the yellow hat found George when he came to call for him. They picked him up and shook him, but they couldn't wake him up. He was fast asleep, and that finally they had to put him under the shower. How surprised he was when he woke up. George said goodbye to the nurse and the kind doctor, and then he and the man with the big yellow hat got into the car and drove to the movie studio. And in the president's office, George had to sign a contract. Now he was a movie actor. And in the studio, George was kept so busy all the time that he forgot to be curious. He liked the jungle they made for him, and he played happily there. And when the picture was finally finished, George invited all of his friends to see it. The doctor and the nurse and the ambulance driver, the man from the newsstand, the woman and the elevator man, and the 2 painters and the cook and the reporter, all of the keepers of the zoo. And now the lights went out, the picture started. "This is George," the voice began. "He lived in the jungle. He was a very good little monkey. He only had one fault. He was too curious." One book, many voices. Join and read with everyone.